Welcome back to Brokers of Secrets, episode 4. In this episode, we're going to talk about one of the most important topics here in Upgrade. It's the topic of how do you respond or react when hard times hit, when you don't know how to respond, or when scarcity events or events that causes you to be like, oh my gosh, holy crap, right? That just happened. How do I deal with this, right? For example, let's say you got paid really well. Well, of course, everybody would respond positively. But what if something cost you money, cost you way more money than you expected, or an event that conventionally may be deemed as a negative, or it be a hardship event, it'd be a hard time, and it's challenging? How would everyone respond? Most people, it's easy for them to respond negatively or in a scarcity mindset, right? It's easy for them to respond with that reaction that isn't necessarily going to serve them. But that's what most people do. Yet, how do you respond abundantly even in those situations is going to determine what happens in your reality next. Now, I'm going to spend the episode breaking down the nature and the structure of these events and how you can implement the structure that we're going to recommend and what kind of magic is going to unfold in your life. And listen, it's really not about responding like everyone else does, because if you do, you're going to get the same results everyone else get, right? Because look, it's easy to respond well when you're experiencing a positive event. It's also normal for a lot of people to respond in a very negative way when there's a negative event. Now, listen, think of it like this. These people who are responding, reacting based on these external, they're basically basing their feelings on the external occurrences. They are slaves to their external world. They're basically slaves. They don't have control over what's going on inside, and they follow what the external world dictates. What other definition is there, right? A good way to think of it is, if you want to be the master of your external world, you are in charge of how you feel, not your external environment. And the magic of that allows you to actually master your external world. Because why would your external world obey you, if we're speaking somewhat metaphysically here? Why would your external world obey you and your commands while you can't even control and master your own emotions? When your own emotions, your own subconscious mind won't even obey you, why would the elements outside obey you? Why would the world around you obey you, right? Listen, it's really not about just being in control or just mastering your mind. It's about understanding that relationship between how you get to command your mind to feel what you want it to feel rather than just reacting. And that ability to command your mind will translate to the ability of commanding your reality. Now, it's not a one-time thing either. You've got to show consistency. You've got to show consistency of being able to over and over and over have that ability to maintain state. Now, am I saying don't be, some say, hey, it's human to have emotions. Of course, right? I'm not saying don't have emotions. What I am saying is become a master of it. Yeah. Understand that emotions are a signal, right? A message delivery mechanism. It's there to communicate something from your subconscious. And let's get down deeper, actually. When you feel something, positive, negative, it's a signal, as I was saying. That signal is communicating a message from your subconscious. What's that message? The message is that there is a program in your mind, and that program either agrees with what's happening or it disagrees. And if it disagrees, meaning whatever's happening outside is not congruent with the program, challenging your program, disagrees with your program, you may feel something perhaps negative, perhaps Yeah. And it's, of course, scenario by scenario. But let me give you some specifics. Let's say, let's say in your mind, you have this subconscious program that, maybe you were in a family, you grew up in a family that makes six figures and you're making six figures. Let's say you're making 150K, 200K. Well, if in a certain month, after many years of making 150 to 200K, you dip down to maybe only, 10K, right? Or a certain year, depending on whether you're talking about monthly or annually. Let's say you're doing 150 to 200 annually and you dip down to 20K that year, you're going to feel terrible, regardless of the physical consequences, right? You're going to feel the negative feelings, right? Well, listen, what if you well exceed that, right? Sure, the program may not match, right? Maybe you did 300K, but your internal program says 150. What happens is, even though that may not match, you're going to have a positive feeling, right? There's a program that is a measurement device basically inside. And when we have emotions, it's because that this measurement device is measuring against what's going on, and it's giving you signal based on that program. Now, not all the programs are based on numbers or things like that kind of parameters, but let's do another example, yeah? Let's say you are making 150 to 200 and you are again making 150 to 200 that following year. No difference. You're not necessarily going to feel negative or positive. You're going to feel that that program is taking, basically, it's giving you, hey, here's the baseline and you're here. You may feel dissatisfied. You may feel okay about it. And many people are okay with staying the same, right? However, let's say that in your mind, right, your program is also tied to, if you make more money, that means you're a bad person or evil person, or that you're a greedy person. Because a lot of people also believe that having a lot of wealth means evil, means bad, means whatever it is. Let's say you have that program. Well, you are going to find something very interesting that will happen. If you're going to get offered a promotion, or you're in a situation where you're going to get a promotion or an opportunity to increase that number, what's interesting is you may find yourself unconsciously negating that. You may find yourself unconsciously sabotaging the opportunity to make the 300 or 400 and beyond, because in your mind, you're like, I'm a good person. I'm not an evil person. Of course, this is not conscious. You're not saying that consciously. Your subconscious mind's like, in order for me to stay being a nice, good human, I cannot increase my income, because anything over, maybe you believe 150 to 200, anything beyond that is too much or really well off. Now, that obviously, again, depends on your belief, right? These programs actually dictate how we feel more often than we realize. So if you were offered the opportunity to have a promotion or do a project that increases your income, you may find yourself unconsciously resisting. You may find yourself actually feeling negative emotions towards opportunities that will get you to grow. Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's anger. Maybe it's something else. But that feeling is going to cause you to stop progressing towards that, and or say no to the positive or potentially massively positive experience of increasing your income. Because in your mind, it's not positive. In your mind, it's negative. It would make you a bad person. If this is making sense, you will notice that we run not one program, but hundreds, if not thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of programs inside of us that has, basically these are the root causes of why we feel certain things. When we feel positive, negative, or even neutral, it's because the program is responding. And we're touching on the programs. when we're experiencing life, and these programs light up like they're part of the circuit board, the program that's running the circuit board. It lights up. Now, let me give you a practical implementation tip. When you begin to notice that you feel negative emotions or positive emotions, don't think of them as, oh man, I feel bad, that must mean, oh, I feel good, that must mean. Do not assign meaning just yet. Observe the feeling and observe when and where that feeling may have come from. Because if you understand when and where a feeling comes from, you begin to have resources and understanding of why that may have formed the way it did. Just like if you get on your computer, you can oftentimes sort of go on a time machine and press the button and go backward to when a program was not installed yet. Or maybe it's a month ago when you didn't install a bunch of stuff. You can actually turn your computer back to that time. And what that does is that it reverts back to then before you made all the changes. Well, the same thing when it comes to the human mind. When you can identify when and where a program started, you can actually easily and effortlessly revert back and or remove the new program that's not actually serving you. And some of these so-called new programs, I don't mean that they're actually new. It's just that there was a point in time that this program didn't exist. Therefore, it's new after that point, right? So I'll give you a concrete example. When I was 5 years old, my mother told me, if you have a lot of money, make a lot of money, don't tell people because people will try to take that from you. Now, that's absolutely not true. However, sure, are there people like that? Yeah. That being said, does it have to be the people that you spend your time around and or get near? No. What I'm saying here is that very moment I decided if I'm going to make a lot of money, I'm going to spend it so that I don't have to. There's no opportunity for other people to take it because I already spent it. Now, that was a silly decision, but made by 5-year-old me. So growing up even into my 20s, I was like, oh, as soon as I made money, I spend it. And I was wondering why, and I thought there was something going on, something wrong with me. But really, it was a protective mechanism based on a program that I installed when I was 5 years old. And then every time I would have more money in the bank account, I actually felt anxious about it. And I was like, why am I feeling anxious? I have more money than before. This is not normal, right? I'm going to tell you, the reason you feel any feeling is based on programming. Feelings, again, these are programming response. These are signals from your program. These are the signals in which you're interacting with your reality, your subconscious mind is responding. So if you look at your life, have you ever been paid and you feel really good? And then when you lost money, you feel really crappy? That sounds normal, but those are also pre-programmed responses. The trick and the understanding that you need to have is that you need to reprogram how you respond. If you can reprogram how you respond, you will begin to see that emotions, along with how it is a signal telling you what the interaction is between your program and your reality, it also tells you something very significant. Now, listen carefully. What is that significant thing? Your feelings, if strong enough, becomes your state. Your state is how you create your reality. Think about that. It's a resonance. It's a frequency. Your feeling is a frequency. How you feel will attract, as they call it, attract. But really, it's a projection as much as an attraction, but it's really not even a manifestation. Like these words, right? Projection, attraction, manifestation, they're actually describing a linear process. But what we're talking about is quantum in nature, meaning the moment you change your state, something rearranges as if it's faster than the speed of light. You are creating changes, whether you notice it or not, based on your consistent state. So if you consistently put yourself in a state where it's feeling abundant, feeling scarcity, feeling abundant, feeling scarcity, having money, feeling abundant, not having money, feeling scarcity, you are shifting inconsistent. You're having a very inconsistent state, and that inconsistency in your states will cause you to resonate in a certain way and have a frequency that's that attracts abundance, scarcity. So what I'm simply saying is your states allows us to predict your next moment. So whatever you're consistently in terms of state will cause us to be able to see the pattern in which you're going to be rising or falling or staying in that amazing positive abundant state or shifting between abundance and scarcity. And think of it like this. There's a buffer between how you feel, your state, versus what's being displayed in this so-called external reality. And that buffer may cause you to experience what you feel consistently to show up a moment later or a few moments later, or sometimes even months later. It's not an instantaneously occurring thing, usually not instantaneous. Now, if you're like, oh, well, that's great, but how do I make sure I don't feel like crap if something negative happens financially or relationship wise well, the truth is, if you understand that your state, intense state or consistent state will cause what happens next in so many ways than we imagine, it is literally going to resonate in a certain negative way, right? If you're in a negative state, and it will cause your external reality to resonate the same way. Remember, your external world is very much like a projector screen. And this light frequency coming out of your projector, right? That's being projected on the screen. The screen, what's on the screen is not actually on the screen, right? It's a projection from your laptop going through the projector screen, getting onto getting on the projector screen. So if you consider what you've been experiencing in life, there's usually that buffer involved. And if you are not careful, you're allowing the external world to dictate how you feel inside. That's going to project the next moment. So if you have positive, negative, and you feel positive, negative, it will perpetuate itself, positive, negative. If you're in positive state, and I'm simplifying it, right? If you're in a positive state and then something that may be deemed as negative, according to some other people, occur, but you stay positive. And then something else happened, you stay positive. And actually staying positive, feeling abundant, right? And then something amazing happens, you stay positive and abundant. You will find that you, over time, minimize any scarcity event. And you will begin to notice more and more and more of those abundant events occurring over and over and over. So here's the trick. You need to understand that the most important secret here is the less gap that you have between abundance and scarcity state, meaning the less you feel scarcity and stay in abundance, the less problems you're going to have that are the projection, right? Like that projector screen, projector relationship, the less of those negative or scarcity events are that you're going to project. Your job is to minimize feeling scarcity when it seems like everything justifies that you feel scarcity. Instead, you choose to feel abundant regardless. So give you an example. One time in my business, and in fact, this is not one time, there were many times that I aggressively invest into the business or make certain moves. And when I do, I find myself dipping down my bank account, right? Now, in the beginning, I would freak out. I'm like, oh man, I have a few $100 left and I have payroll, I have this, I have that. The problem with that is I'm being a slave to my external world. And when that happens, I may make my money back, but then I would find myself falling back into that, wow, what the crap, right? I only have X amount of hundreds left, blah, blah, blah. you got to realize when you do that, peaks and valley, it's like riding an emotional roller coaster. A lot of entrepreneurs claims that they ride that. It's really because they have not learned to regulate their emotional states. They have not learned to master it, right? They have not learned to gain total control over it, where even when you dip down to a certain low number, whatever that is, you still find yourself feeling absolute certainty that things are going to work out even better. If you can genuinely stay abundant when those moments occur, those moments ceases to exist. Because again, it's a projection. So, to summarize this episode, what I want you to remember is that if you ever wonder why life seems very unpredictable, it's because your state is not being mastered. You're not controlling your state. You're not allowing yourself to feel abundant when it seems like everything, all hell broke loose, everything's against you. You, of all people, at this moment, need to feel extremely abundant and as abundant as possible. Frankly, if more people were feeling abundant and acting accordingly and living in that way, you will find this world will have less conflicts, less problems, less greed, and more love and more abundance, right? So if you were to take anything away from this episode, remember, it's time for you to make a full decision to be abundant no matter what happens outside. And if you can be abundant regardless of what happens outside, you now become the master of your reality. And no reality is going to enslave you. No reality is going to say, here's what you do. They can't tell you what to do, right? The reality, because people oftentimes are slaves to their reality, right? And when you are able to be in charge of your mind, you will have the abundance, the dominion, the happiness, the growth, and all of the, again, I'm going to say that word again, abundance. You're going to have so much abundance that you actually realize it started from within you. Your reality is only as abundant as you really are, because it's not about what you do. It's not about what you have. It's about who you are. Let's talk about something really important in the next episode. How does your mind determine what's real and what's not? And this ability to understand that, hey, I'm actually making stuff up in my mind a lot about my reality. My reality is actually way more abundant. How do we get out of our own way? How do we get out of the illusion of scarcity? And how do we succeed in the midst of doubts and uncertainty and even friends and family telling you cannot do it? We're going to show you how you can win regardless of your circumstances and regardless of even whether you believe in yourself or not. See you in the next episode.